The summer sun beat down on the construction site as Alex wiped the sweat from his forehead and reached for his lunchbox. He had been working since dawn, supervising the new apartment complex project, and his sandwich break couldn't have come at a better time. Settling down in the makeshift break area, he pulled out his phone to catch up on some social media while eating, a habit his wife always teased him about. The familiar blue and white Facebook interface loaded, and he lazily scrolled through the usual mix of memes and updates from old high school friends. That's when everything changed. His thumb froze mid-scroll, and the half-eaten sandwich slipped from his other hand, landing forgotten in the dust. There, posted 20 minutes ago, was a photo that made his world spin. His wife Lily, looking exhausted but radiant, was lying in a hospital bed. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a pale blue blanket. A newborn baby. Their supposed struggle with fertility had been the center of their lives for the past 2 years, but this was a complete shock. His hands trembling, Alex zoomed in on the picture. The caption read, "Welcome to the world, little one. You are so loved." The comment section was already filling up with congratulations and heart emojis, but it was his brother Ryan's comment that made his stomach lurch. "He's perfect, just like we dreamed." "We?" The word echoed in his head like a thunderclap. Alex's coffee thermos crashed to the ground, spilling dark liquid across his work boots, but he barely noticed. His coworker's chatter faded into white noise as he scrolled through more comments, each one feeling like a knife twist. Friends and family, people he knew, people who knew him, all congratulating his wife and his brother. "Hey, you okay there?" His colleague Dave's voice seemed to come from far away. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Alex couldn't answer. His mind was racing through the past few months, piecing together a puzzle he never wanted to solve. Lally's late nights at the real estate office, Ryan's increasing presence at their house, always there to help out, while Alex worked overtime for their future. The whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room. The way Lily had started keeping her phone face down and taking it with her even to the bathroom. He had attributed it all to stress. The fertility treatments, the pressure of trying to start a family, her demanding job. He had even been grateful that his brother was there to support them both during such a difficult time. What a fool he had been. His fingers moved automatically, dialing Lily's number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. She was in the hospital, having just given birth to a baby. A baby that should have been impossible given their fertility struggles. A baby that... The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just about today's shocking Facebook post. This was about months of lies, betrayal from the two people he trusted most in the world. His wife and his own brother had been living a secret life right under his nose. Standing up abruptly, Alex grabbed his truck keys from his pocket. Dave called after him, asking about the afternoon's concrete delivery, but Alex couldn't bring himself to care about work right now. His entire life had just imploded through a Facebook post, and he needed answers. As he climbed into his truck, his phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Bro, call me when you can. We need to talk." Alex stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting his own pale face back at him. The brother who had taught him to ride a bike, who had stood as his best man at his wedding, who had held him through their father's funeral, that same brother had just shattered his entire world. Starting the engine, Alex pulled out of the construction site, leaving behind confused coworkers and half-finished projects. He didn't know exactly where he was heading, but he knew one thing for certain: nothing in his life would ever be the same after today. The traffic lights and street signs blurred past as his mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Who else knew? What would their mother say? And most importantly, how had he been so blind to what was happening in his own home? His grip tightened on the steering wheel as he made a decision. Before confronting either of them, he needed to see for himself. He turned his truck toward their suburban home, dreading what evidence of betrayal he might find there. 3 months earlier, life had seemed so different. Alex remembered the morning he first noticed something was off with Lily. She had been sitting at their kitchen counter, stirring her coffee absently, the morning light catching the wedding ring she now wore like a prop in an elaborate play. "I might be working late again tonight," she had said, not meeting his eyes. "The Henderson property is taking longer than expected." It was the third time that week she'd stayed late at the real estate office. Alex had nodded, trying to be understanding, even offering to drop off dinner for her. No. The word had come out too quickly, too sharply. I mean, no need. I'll grab something with the team. She had gathered her things in a rush, leaving her coffee mostly untouched, something she'd never done before in their 6 years together. That same week, Ryan had started coming around more often. Just checking in on you both, he'd said, bringing takeout and staying to watch games with Alex when Lily was working. Now, sitting in his truck outside their house, Alex realized his brother had been checking their schedules, learning their routines. The memories kept flooding back as he stared at their front door. Their weekly date nights, a tradition since they first started dating, had gradually disappeared. I'm too tired, Lily would say, or I have an early showing tomorrow. Alex had bought her favorite chocolates one Friday, hoping to surprise her, only to find the house empty and her phone going straight to voicemail. He had blamed himself then, thinking he wasn't being supportive enough during their fertility struggles. The doctors had said their chances were low, but they had kept trying. All those medications, the careful tracking of days, the disappointment each month, had it all been an act? Or had that part at least been real? Looking back, he could see how Ryan had inserted himself into every crack in their marriage. Let me help with the yard work while you're at the construction site, he'd offered. You're working so hard, bro. Let me take some pressure off. Those long conversations with Lily in the garden, their heads bent close together over coffee on the back porch, the inside jokes he hadn't understood, it had all been happening right in front of him. Alex finally stepped out of his truck, his legs feeling heavy as he walked up the familiar path. The garden gnome Lily had insisted on buying at their local fair still stood guard by the steps, its cheerful smile now seeming to mock him. He reached for his keys, then noticed Ryan's muddy work boots by the door, the same boots that had tracked dirt across their kitchen floor countless times over the past months. Inside, the house felt different, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. The photos on the walls, family gatherings, their wedding day, childhood pictures of him and Ryan, watched him as he moved through the living room. A half-empty glass of water sat on the coffee table beside one of Ryan's sports magazines. How long had his brother been making himself at home here while he was away? The guest room door was ajar, and Alex pushed it open slowly. Ryan's belongings were scattered around, not just an overnight bag, but drawers half full of his clothes, his favorite shower gel in the attached bathroom, his laptop charging on the desk. This wasn't the room of someone just staying over occasionally to help out. This was the room of someone who lived here. But it was the master bedroom that delivered the final blow. On the bed he had shared with Lily for 5 years lay an open suitcase, hastily packed with a mix of her clothes and what he recognized as Ryan's belongings. A sonogram picture had fallen from between the folded clothes, dated 3 months ago. The same time Lily had suggested they take a break from fertility treatments because they were too stressful. His phone buzzed again, another text from Ryan. I know you've seen the post. Please let me explain. It's not what you think. Not what he thought. The evidence was all around him, in every corner of what he had believed was his happy home. The betrayal had been choreographed like a perfect dance, with him playing the role of the oblivious audience. Alex sank onto the edge of the bed, holding the sonogram picture with trembling hands. In the kitchen, he could hear the clock ticking, the antique one they'd bought on their honeymoon. Each tick seemed to whisper, they knew, they knew, they knew. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped him back to reality. Through the bedroom window, he saw Ryan's truck parking next to his own. His brother was home to a house that was never meant to be his, to a life he had stolen one careful lie at a time. Alex heard the front door open, followed by familiar footsteps, the same footsteps he'd grown up hearing in their childhood home. His brother's gait was unmistakable, a slight shuffle in the right step from an old football injury. The sound now made his stomach turn. Alex? Ryan's voice carried up the stairs, uncertain but not surprised. Of course he wasn't surprised. He must have known this moment would come eventually. I can explain everything. Those 4 words sparked something in Alex. Explain everything. How could anyone explain this level of betrayal? He stood up from the bed, still holding the sonogram picture, and walked to the top of the stairs. There stood his younger brother, looking up at him with those same eyes that had once begged him to cover for teenage mishaps and celebrated with him at his wedding. "You can explain." Alex's voice came out steadier than he expected. "Explain how you got my wife pregnant while I was working overtime to pay for fertility treatments. Explain how you both laughed at me behind my back." "Go ahead, Ryan. I'm all ears." Ryan took a step forward, his hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. "It wasn't like that. We never meant for this to happen. It just did. It just did." Alex descended the stairs slowly, each step heavy with the weight of memories. "Things don't just happen, Ryan. You make choices. You both made choices. Every single day, you chose to lie to me." The family photos on the stairway wall seemed to watch their confrontation, pictures of two brothers growing up together, always having each other's backs. Christmas mornings, fishing trips, graduation day, Alex's wedding. Ryan had been his best man, giving a tearful speech about brotherhood and loyalty. "Remember what you said at my wedding?" Alex stopped halfway down the stairs, looking his brother in the eye. "You said I was the best man you knew, that you hoped to have a marriage like mine someday. Was that when you started planning this, or did that come later?" "You're my brother," Ryan's voice cracked. "I never wanted to hurt you. Lily and I, we tried to fight it. We really did." "Fight it?" Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You tried to fight it by spending every possible moment together? By sneaking around behind my back? By getting her pregnant while I was breaking my back at work, trying to give her the baby we couldn't have?" The sonogram picture crumpled in his fist. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, children played in the distance, the world going on as if everything hadn't just fallen apart. "She was lonely," Ryan said softly. "You were always working." "I was working for us." Alex's voice finally broke. "For our future. For the family we were trying to build." "And you?" He had to stop, the words catching in his throat. "You were supposed to be my brother." The silence that followed was deafening. Through the window, Alex could see their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watering her plants, completely unaware of the drama unfolding inside. How many other neighbors had seen Ryan coming and going? How many had guessed? "The baby," Ryan started, then stopped, as if realizing there was no good way to continue that sentence. "Your son," Alex finished for him. "Born today, I found out on Facebook, Ryan." "Facebook?" Each word felt like glass in his mouth. "Did you both enjoy that? Planning how to announce it? Deciding how to let everyone know that my brother and my wife had a baby together?" Ryan's face crumpled. "We were going to tell you after things settled down. Lily didn't want to stress you while you were managing that big project." "How considerate of you both." Alex's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Always thinking of me, weren't you? Tell me, when exactly did this start? When did my brother and my wife decide to become a family behind my back?" The sound of another car pulling up made them both freeze. Through the front window, Alex could see Lily's sister Beth getting out of her car, her face drawn with worry. Of course, the cavalry had arrived. How many more people knew before him? "I'm calling Mom," Alex said quietly, pulling out his phone. "I think she deserves to hear this from me before she sees it on social media too. Unless, does she already know?" The way Ryan's face fell told Alex everything he needed to know. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined, spreading its roots through their entire family tree. Standing there in the house he'd worked so hard to buy, surrounded by memories that now felt poisoned, Alex felt something inside him shift. The anger was still there, but beneath it was something else. A strange, calm clarity. This house, this life, this family, none of it was what he thought it was. "I want you out of here by tonight," he said, his voice level. "Both of you. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow." As he walked past his brother toward the front door, Ryan reached out to grab his arm. "Alex, please." Alex pulled away as if burned. "Don't. Just don't." He opened the front door, nearly running into Beth, who had her hand raised to knock. "The house is all yours now," he called over his shoulder to Ryan. "You've already taken everything else." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Alex sat in his truck outside his mother's house. He'd been sitting there for 20 minutes, trying to find the right words to explain how her family had fallen apart. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from friends who'd seen the Facebook post, from Beth trying to mediate, from co-workers wondering why he'd left the site so suddenly. Finally, he switched off his phone and walked up the familiar brick path. The wind chimes his father had hummed years ago still tinkled in the breeze, their gentle sound now seeming out of place in his shattered world. Before he could reach for the doorbell, his mother opened the door. "I saw the post," she said simply, her face lined with worry. "Come inside, sweetheart." The house smelled like it always had, a mix of fresh laundry and whatever she was baking. Today it was chocolate chip cookies, Alex's favorite since childhood. The same cookies she'd made when he'd broken his arm in 6th grade, when he'd gotten his heart broken in high school, when his father had passed away. "You knew," he said quietly, standing in the middle of the kitchen. It wasn't a question. His mother pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. "Sit down, Alex. Please." He sat, watching as she poured 2 cups of coffee with shaking hands. Family photos covered the refrigerator, holidays, birthdays, graduations. His eyes fixed on one from last Christmas, where he stood with his arm around Lily, Ryan on her other side. Had it already started then? "How long did you know?" he asked, wrapping his hands around the warm coffee mug. "I suspected something was wrong 2 months ago," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "Ryan was acting strange, guilty. Then Lily started avoiding our weekly lunches. When I confronted Ryan," she trailed off, tears filling her eyes. "You didn't tell me." The words hung heavy in the air between them. I hoped they would end it. I prayed they would come to their senses." She reached across the table for his hand, but he pulled back. "I didn't want to hurt you if I wasn't certain." Alex stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "So you protected them instead? Your youngest son and his brother's wife? That was better." No, it wasn't." His mother's voice cracked. "I was wrong, Alex. So wrong. I was trying to hold the family together, but I just made everything worse." He walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where he and Ryan had spent countless summer days playing catch, building forts, sharing secrets. Every memory now felt tainted, questioned. "They're at the hospital," his mother said softly. "The baby, your nephew." "Don't." Alex turned sharply. "Don't try to make this sound normal. Don't try to make me think about being an uncle to my wife's child with my brother." A timer dinged, and his mother automatically rose to check the cookies. The normalcy of the action struck Alex as absurd. Here they were, discussing the implosion of their family, while fresh cookies baked in the oven. "I remember the day you told me you were going to propose to Lily," his mother said, her back to him as she opened the oven. "You were so nervous, so excited. You showed me the ring, told me all your plans. Ryan helped you pick it out." The memory hit Alex like a physical blow. Ryan had indeed helped choose the ring, spending weeks with him visiting different jewelers. Had his brother already felt something for Lily then? Had he been thinking about her while helping Alex select the symbol of their love? "I'm selling the house," Alex said suddenly. I can't live there anymore, not with their memories in every room." His mother set down the baking sheet with a clatter. "Move in here," she offered quickly. "Your old room is still—" "No." Alex shook his head. "I need to start fresh, somewhere new, somewhere without—" He gestured vaguely at all the family photos surrounding them. "You're still my son," she whispered. "Nothing will ever change that." "But Ryan's your son too," Alex replied. "And now he's given you a grandchild. The grandchild Lily, and I couldn't." His voice broke. The silence that followed was filled only by the ticking of the old kitchen clock. The same clock that had counted out their childhood memories, family dinners, holiday gatherings. Now it was counting the moments of their families unraveling. "I have to go," Alex said finally. "I need to find a hotel for tonight. Tomorrow I'll start looking for an apartment." His mother stepped toward him, and this time he didn't pull away when she hugged him. She felt smaller somehow, more fragile, or maybe he was the one who had changed. "Whatever you need," she said against his shoulder. "Whatever you decide to do, I'm here." As Alex walked back to his truck, he could smell the fresh-baked cookies his mother had pressed into his hands. Such a small, normal thing. A mother baking cookies for her hurting child. But nothing was normal anymore, and even cookies couldn't fix what had been broken today. The hotel room felt sterile and empty as Alex sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. The screen showed dozens of missed calls and messages, but it was the string of texts from Beth, Lily's sister, that finally made him pause his endless scrolling. "I need to tell you something," Beth's message read. "You deserve to know the whole truth. Can we meet?" The coffee shop she suggested was on the other side of town, far from the hospital where Lily and Ryan were. Alex appreciated that small consideration. As he drove there, the evening traffic moved around him like a river around a stone, everyone else's lives continuing normally while his remained frozen in this nightmare. Beth was already waiting at a corner table when he arrived, 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She looked tired, her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. When she saw him, her face crumpled with guilt. "I'm so sorry," she said as he sat down. "I should have told you months ago." Alex wrapped his hands around the warm coffee cup, anchoring himself. "How long have you known?" 8 months, Beth admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I caught them together at Mom's birthday party. In the garage, when everyone else was inside singing happy birthday." She stopped, watching Alex's face carefully. They swore it was the first time, that it would never happen again. The memory of that party flickered through Alex's mind, the cake, the laughter, his mother-in-law opening presents. He'd been worried about Lily that day, thinking she seemed distant. Now he knew why. "But it wasn't the first time, was it?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Beth shook her head slowly. "It started about 2 weeks after Ryan moved back to town. Lily told me," she said, "she was lonely. You were working so much, and Ryan was always around, helping with the house, listening to her talk about the failed fertility treatments." "I was working to pay for those treatments," Alex cut in, his voice sharp. "To give her the baby she wanted so badly. And all that time. She found out she was pregnant 6 weeks before she asked for the separation," Beth continued, tears forming in her eyes. "She told everyone else it was too painful to keep trying with you, that she needed space, but really she already knew." The coffee in front of Alex grew cold as Beth told him everything, how the affair had developed, how they had planned to keep it secret until after the baby was born, how they had convinced themselves they were sparing his feelings by waiting. "Ryan moved his things in gradually," Beth explained. "A few items at a time so you wouldn't notice. They thought they had it all figured out." "Until today's Facebook post," Alex said bitterly. "Did they even plan that, or did someone just get excited about announcing their perfect little family?" Beth looked down at her hands. "One of the nurses posted it. She didn't know, didn't realize. Lily was going to tell you tomorrow, after she got home. She had it all planned out." Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course she did. Lily always has everything planned out, doesn't she? Except this time, social media ruined her perfect timeline." The evening crowd was starting to fill the coffee shop, people stopping in after work for their caffeine fix. A young couple at the next table held hands across their table, looking at each other with love and trust. Alex had to look away. "There's something else," Beth said hesitantly. "The fertility problems, they weren't just yours. Lily had been told years ago that she might have trouble conceiving. She never told you because she was afraid you wouldn't marry her. The treatments, they were never going to work." The revelation hit Alex like a physical blow. All those nights holding Lily while she cried about their failed attempts, all the money spent on treatments, all the hopes built and shattered. It had all been based on a lie. "So not only did she cheat with my brother," he said slowly, "but she let me believe I was the reason we couldn't have children. Let me blame myself all this time." Beth reached across the table, but Alex stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several people turned to look, but he hardly noticed. "I have to go," he said, his voice rough. "I can't. I need to." "Alex, wait," Beth called after him. "There's more you should know." But he was already pushing through the door into the cool evening air. The truth was like a poison in his veins, each new revelation making it harder to breathe, harder to think, harder to remember who he had been just that morning before the Facebook post changed everything. In his truck, he finally let the tears come, not just for the betrayal, but for the years of guilt he had carried, believing his body had failed them, for the money they had spent chasing an impossible dream, for the life he had built on a foundation of lies. His phone buzzed again, another message from Ryan. "The baby's name is Daniel, after Dad. Please, can we talk? Alex turned off his phone and started the engine. He had no destination in mind, but he knew he couldn't stay still. Not with the weight of all these truths pressing down on him, threatening to crush what was left of his heart. The morning sunlight streamed through the hotel room window, waking Alex from his restless sleep. His phone showed 37 missed calls and over 50 text messages. The story had spread through their small town like wildfire, and everyone seemed to have an opinion or wanted to offer support. He scrolled through the messages, his co-workers expressing shock and sympathy, old high school friends offering their couches to crash on, neighbors sharing their disbelief. But it was the message from Pete, his father's best friend, that finally made him sit up and take notice. "Come by the diner for breakfast," Pete had written. "Your dad and I spent every Saturday morning there. Think you could use some of his wisdom right about now." The Bell Street diner looked exactly as it had when Alex was a kid, right down to the slightly crooked neon sign and the faded red booths. Pete sat in his usual corner spot, 2 cups of coffee already on the table. "Heard the news," Pete said as Alex slid into the booth. Your dad would have knocked some sense into both of them. The mention of his father made Alex's throat tight. They named the baby Daniel, after Dad. Pete's weathered face darkened. They had no right. Your father would have never stood for this. Remember what he always said about family. "Family is all we've got," Alex quoted automatically. The words tasted bitter now. The waitress approached their table, her face full of poorly concealed curiosity. News traveled fast in small towns, and by now, everyone knew. "The usual, Pete?" she asked, then turned to Alex with sympathy in her eyes. "And for you, hon?" "Just coffee," Alex mumbled, but Pete interrupted. "He'll have the big breakfast. Boy needs his strength." He waited until the waitress left before continuing. "You know, your father faced something similar once. Not exactly the same, but—" Alex looked up in surprise. "Dad?" But he and Mom were perfect together. Pete shook his head. "Before your mom, your dad was engaged to another woman. His brother, your Uncle Tom, fell for her. But unlike Ryan, Tom came clean immediately. Broke your dad's heart, but he did the right thing." "I never knew," Alex said softly, "what happened. Your dad was angry for a long time. But then he met your mom, and well, you know the rest." Pete stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us where we need to be." The diner's bell chimed as more customers entered. Alex could feel their stares, hear their whispered conversations. His private pain had become public entertainment. "I got calls from 3 different news websites," Alex admitted. "They want to interview me about the viral Facebook birth announcement scandal. Like my life falling apart is some kind of clickbait story." Pete's face hardened. "Vultures, your dad would have run them out of town." The waitress returned with their food, setting a massive plate in front of Alex: eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast. The sight of it reminded him he hadn't eaten since yesterday's half-finished lunch at the construction site. "The crew at the site wants me back," Alex said, picking at his toast. "Dave called this morning. Said work might help keep my mind off things." "Might be right," Pete nodded. "Your dad always said honest work was the best medicine for a troubled heart." As they ate, more familiar faces entered the diner. Some nodded awkwardly at Alex, others pretended not to see him. Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, stopped by their table on her way out. "Such a shame," she said, patting Alex's shoulder. "I'd always thought something wasn't right. All those late nights, your brother's truck always there. I should have said something." After she left, Alex pushed his plate away. "Seems like everyone knew something was wrong except me." "Don't do that to yourself," Pete said firmly. "Trust isn't a weakness, son. Being betrayed doesn't make you a fool, it makes them wrong." Through the diner's window, Alex could see the town waking up. The hardware store owner unlocking his doors, teenagers heading to the skate park, couples walking their dogs. Life going on as if his world hadn't imploded. "I got a call from a lawyer in the city," Alex said quietly. "She specializes in situations like this." Pete nodded approvingly. "Good. You need someone in your corner who isn't tied to all this emotional mess." She asked if I wanted to file for divorce on grounds of adultery. Make it all public record. Alex stirred his coffee absently. "Part of me wants to. Make them face what they did in front of everyone. And the other part? The other part just wants to disappear. Start fresh somewhere where nobody knows me as the guy whose brother and wife. He couldn't finish the sentence. Pete reached across the table and grabbed Alex's shoulder, his grip firm and grounding. Listen to me, son. Your father built half the houses in this town with his own 2 hands. Your roots are here. Don't let them drive you away from your home. The morning sun caught the old photos on the diner's walls, decades of local history, including one of Alex's father and Pete at this very table. His father's smile, so similar to Ryan's, seemed to mock him now. I don't know if I can stay, Alex admitted. Everything here reminds me of them, of what I lost. Then build something new, Pete said simply. Your father taught you how to do that, didn't he? When something's broken beyond repair, you start fresh. But you do it on your terms, not theirs. 1 year later, Alex stood in his new apartment, holding the final divorce papers. The morning light filtered through the large windows he'd installed himself, part of the renovation project that had kept him sane over the past months. The space felt different now, no longer just a refuge from his old life, but the beginning of something new. His phone buzzed with a text from Pete. Coffee this morning. Your dad would be proud of the work you've done on that building. The old warehouse conversion had been Pete's idea. 6 months ago, he'd mentioned that the abandoned building on Oak Street was up for sale. Alex had taken one look at the rundown structure and seen the possibility of something new rising from the ashes of his old life. Now, the ground floor housed a thriving coffee shop, and he'd turned the upper level into modern apartments, including his own. Every nail he'd driven, every wall he'd built, had been a step away from the pain and towards something of his own making. His mother had helped pick out the furniture, her way of trying to bridge the gap that had formed in their family. She still saw Ryan and Lily, still visited her grandson, but she'd learned to keep those parts of her life separate from her relationship with Alex. The coffee shop below was starting to fill with the morning crowd. Alex could hear the familiar hum of conversation and the whir of the espresso machine through the floorboards. The noise reminded him of how much had changed since that day he'd found out about the baby on Facebook. Opening his laptop, he saw another message, this one from Beth. She'd become an unexpected ally over the past year, having cut ties with Lily after learning the full extent of her sister's deception. Her message was simple. Heard today's the day. How are you holding up? Before he could reply, his doorbell rang. Standing there was Katie, the real estate agent he'd been working with to sell his old house. They'd grown closer over the past few months, their conversations moving from property values to personal hopes and dreams. Thought you might need moral support today, she said, holding up a bag of fresh bagels. Plus, I have good news about the house. Alex let her in, grateful for the distraction. The old house had been on the market for 3 months, its rooms finally cleared of the memories that had haunted them. He'd donated most of the furniture, keeping only his father's old toolbox and a few family photos from before everything fell apart. We have a solid offer, Katie said, spreading cream cheese on a bagel. Young couple, first-time buyers, they love all the work you've put into it. Alex nodded, thinking of the weekends he'd spent fixing up the house for sale, replacing the kitchen counters, repainting the walls, planting new flowers in the garden where Lily and Ryan had once sat together. Each repair had felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. You know, Katie said carefully, they're expecting their first child. They want to know if the nursery you built is still there. The nursery. He'd almost forgotten about it. He'd built it himself during those hopeful months of fertility treatments, pouring his dreams into every detail. Yes, he said softly. I left it exactly as it was. Seems right that it should finally be used. Katie's hand found his across the table, a gentle gesture of understanding. Their relationship was still new, cautious, both of them aware of the weight of his past. But there was something honest about it, something that felt like the possibility of healing. I saw them yesterday, Katie said quietly. Ryan and Lily. At the grocery store with the baby. Alex tensed, but the pain wasn't as sharp as it used to be. How did that make you feel? Katie asked, her voice gentle. Like looking at strangers, he admitted. I barely recognized them. It was true. The brother and wife he'd known had died the day of that Facebook post. The people who shared their faces were strangers to him now. The sound of children playing drifted up from the street below. Alex walked to the window, looking down at the neighborhood he'd chosen for his fresh start. The coffee shop's morning rush was in full swing, and he could see Pete sitting at his usual table, waiting for him. "I should head down," he said, picking up the divorce papers. "Need to get these to the lawyer, then meet Pete." Katie stood, gathering her things. "Want company later? We could try that new Thai place you've been talking about." Alex smiled. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. "I'd like that." As they walked downstairs together, Alex caught his reflection in the coffee shop's window. He looked different now, stronger, older perhaps, but also more at peace. The man whose life had shattered a year ago was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to build something new from the broken pieces. Pete waved from his table, 2 cups of coffee already waiting. The morning sun caught the fresh paint on the coffee shop sign, Second Chances Cafe. Alex had chosen the name himself, a reminder that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. The divorce papers felt light in his hand now, no longer a weight but a key unlocking his future. Today marked the official end of his old life, but standing there in the morning sunlight, surrounded by the world he built for himself, Alex finally felt ready to begin again.